Hi everybody, thanks for joining again for another Data Lab community webinar. I'm Stephen Thompson, the Events and Community Manager at the Data Lab. This session is part of our Data Lab Community Events Programme. For those of you who are maybe new to the community, the Data Lab community is an online community for anyone who's interested in data and AI, whether you are at the kind of quite well into your career or you're just getting started. It's a place where you can come online, meet other like-minded people who have got a similar interest in data and AI, find resources, join events, share any challenges, or kind of find support for work that you're doing, and just a place to generally connect with other people who are working and interested in data and AI. So if you're not already a member, you can join for free by scanning the QR code, which you should see kind of on the Zoom call here. But if not, I'll put a link to the community site in the chat afterwards. So on to today's session. Today we're here to discuss how you can start to use AI, in particular Claude, to build a comms campaign in under 30 minutes using Claude. So in a second, I'll hand you over to Michael, who will be taking us through a 30-minute live demo where we'll kind of run through a kind of a workflow and how you can start to use AI to build your comms campaigns. There will be opportunities for you to ask questions. So if you've got any questions, just pop them in the Q&A, which you should see at the bottom of your Zoom, and we'll get to those at the end. And you can pop them in. You don't have to wait till the end before you ask your question. So if a question comes to mind, just chuck it in, and we'll get to that later. There will also be quite a few opportunities for you to kind of interact and shape the session as well. So if you can use the chat for that, and Michael will kind of prompt you when it's time for you to kind of have your say and vote on the direction of the session. So as I said, really excited to welcome Michael MacLennan to today's session. Michael is the founder of FOR, a communications consultancy, and also Applied Comms AI, which is a learning lab exploring how AI can be applied practically to communications and marketing workflows. If that wasn't enough, Michael is also the digital and social director at Grayling UK, which is a global PR firm leading strategic advisory work with major clients around the world. In today's session, Michael is going to take us through his workflow for creating a structured comms campaign in under 30 minutes using Claude's project folders and skills features. And over the next half an hour, we'll build a practical communications workflow that demonstrates how strategy, messaging, and channel thinking can all be developed quickly when you use AI with the right structures and constraints. So really looking forward to this session and keen to see what we all learn together. So without any more delay, I'll hand you over to Michael.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And can I check that you can see this screen?
Yes, I can see that now. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome everyone to today's live webinar, and thanks, Stephen, for a lovely introduction. By the end of this hour, you'll have a workflow that you can run tomorrow or today if you're especially keen. This isn't about theory. What we're looking to do today is have a system you can actually use, and importantly, place where you can put it that makes it better every time you run it. So we're going to build live, as you can see through the screen sharing. Slightly terrifying for me, but let's get into it. And just as a bit of context, for those people who don't know, Claude is a leading AI tool created by Anthropic. It sits alongside ChatGPT from OpenAI, Gemini from Google, Copilot from Microsoft, Grok from X.AI, and a variety of competitors. What I've just done is ask it to create an introductory slide deck using Sonnet 4.6, which is just launched today or last night and is Claude's mid-tier model, balancing speed and depth. So what you can see here, and I thought it would just be quite interesting to have the idea of generating a presentation deck within Claude itself, which is one of its newer capabilities, came within the past year, I think. And it demonstrates how much you can now produce and access entirely within Claude. So presentations, documents, spreadsheets. So it's not just text responses. Anyway, while it's generating this, let's get into the flow of things. So what I'm going to do right now is build the campaign pack from scratch in under 30 minutes. So there's going to be 5 steps to this. So what you can see right now is this is showing me options for how to do this slide deck. Uh, and it includes the 5-step methodology. So what we're going to be doing is preparing a brief, building a foundational comms structure, the tactical planning, and then we'll be generating assets and introducing quality gates. And before any of that, we're going to be setting up a Claude projects folder. So yeah, as Stephen said, if you want to jump in with comments and suggestions as we go on, please do. And by the end of this, you'll leave the prompts, the templates, and the project structure. And that's all on the link that I shared in the chat. So we've got 3 pre-prepared briefs. I'm just going to put these in the chat right now as well. And thanks for people who voted in the Data Lab forum for this. So the 3 briefs, and I'll put this just on the chat window as well so you can see. This is a type of organization for us to do a campaign for today. So the first of these is a B2B SaaS launch. So producing a compliance analytics dashboard for mid-market finance teams. The second option B is Scottish tourism, so promoting sustainable tourism in the Scottish Highlands, looking to increase booking inquiries from European markets. And option C to vote on is law firm repositioning. So this is an Edinburgh-based firm, moving from generalist to tech M&A specialist, looking to build credibility of startup founders. So yeah, I'll give it a minute for you to vote A, B, or C. And then do include in the chat any names that would also work for the choice, and we can use that as well when we're going forward. And yeah, while you're voting, let me explain that what makes this different from just using AI in a one-off chat is that when you create a project folder in Claude or a custom GPT in ChatGPT, Google folders in Gemini, these function as persistent workspaces. So you're not starting from scratch every time. In Power, what we'll be doing right now is uploading brief and other documents, setting tone rules, project instructions, and they're going to be there then for every conversation. So yeah, just going to scroll through. Thank you so much for the forum responses that happened prior to this, and then also what I'm seeing in the chat. So let me know if I'm wrong with this, Stephen, but I'm personally seeing more B, so I'm leaning towards B at the moment. So what we'll do is then, if there's any names for option B, do let me know, and we can include this. But what I'm going to do is go into projects folders within Claude and create a specific folder for this campaign. So I'll click on New Project. For the name at the moment, we'll just call it Scottish Tourism, but we can give the company itself a name shortly. And then in what you're trying to achieve, I'll just copy and paste the brief in here. So that's just for our own relevance when you have multiple project folders. So this is now the projects folder, which we'll be working within. And then through this will then be able to retain the information that we'll be creating and storing. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is to create a brief. So we again go for option B. And then putting in this prompt. So I'm just copying and pasting the prompt in the interest of time, but I'll just talk you through it right now. So what we're looking to do is create project instructions for the folder, which also functions as a brief for this campaign. So what I've asked it to do is to generate a campaign brief summary, key assumptions made, a definition of done checklist, so what does finish look like, and then project instructions, including things such as strategic context, rules for assumptions. So we want to ensure that we know when Claude is assuming something, and then we can go in and change that ourselves if we want to. Using UK English, things like maintaining tone consistency, so making it thorough but concise, And you can see that Claude's already got to work on this. So in the interest of time, we'll be moving forward what Claude says, but any of these things can be a conversation, so we can chat further to then clarify, add, amend, and do different things with this. So what you'll see here is campaign brief summary, the key assumption that's made. So geography, here it's gone for Scottish Highlands, looking to increase booking inquiries, constraints around no greenwashing, context is around a new Scottish Government accreditation scheme launched concurrently. So there's quite a lot of detail here already. It's talked about clarifying these, so we can go in, we can talk more about what we specifically need. And then importantly for us, there's a definition done, which is scope control. So what does finish actually look like for us that prevents scope creep later on? And then here's the project instructions as well around a strategic concept, rules for content and assumptions. So a lot of detail that'll basically give us a quality floor that applies automatically to everything that we do here. Question from Mari about why we chose Claude as opposed to other GPTs. It's a good question. Other GPTs such as ChatGPT and Gemini definitely have some similar functionality. Personally, right now, I have a preference towards Claude as I find it much more functional for working on work tasks. So when it comes to project folder that we have here, the way that it shows how it works and things like such as Claude skills, which we'll demonstrate shortly, I find this really useful when working on these types of campaigns. So what I'm doing now is setting the project instructions within the folder. So taking what we had generated and then saving these instructions. And you'll see on the right-hand side here, the instructions now will govern what we do from now on. And that brings us into step 2, which is the foundational comms structure. So what we're going to do now is build a kind of structure where everything checks back against. So if a stakeholder wants to add random ideas, for example, we can test them against this. And then if it doesn't support the key message or audience insight, it doesn't go in. So I'll just copy and paste this prompt and then again talk us through it. So this is building upon what we've done with the project instructions and the initial brief, but getting into more detail. So it's going to have an objective, primary, secondary audience, audience insight, so why they should care, key messages. If you had one sentence, what would you say? Some supporting points, a call to action, and the elevator pictures that we can use in specific circumstances. Also importantly, from what we'll be building, then tone rules. So how should this sound? Risks to avoid. And then I've included some rules as well, just to indicate when human input is needed. Looking not to be generic in terms of strategy speak, no M dashes, which can be a bit of a giveaway for AI generated content, though apologies to those people who do like to use those. And then this is me, I put it as a document, which I can then add to the projects folder as well. And relevance to your question, Mari, then one of the reasons that I like Claude, as we can see here, is the fact that it tells you exactly what it's doing. So it said that it's checking for relevant skills, checking if there's a current installation of docx, and then it's currently building the structured document as a script, which will then translate into a document once it's complete. Thanks. Just reading a question from Megan. So why should you try to hide the AI formatting input? Is it because this is the method still considered invalid? It's a very good question. I think people still have a bit of bristling when they think something's being AI generated, because even though there will be ways in which, say, with these materials, that we've done a lot of work to shape this and refine it, then some people will then think that it's been something just wholly generated by AI with little work that's gone into it. So I think that's why we look to try and avoid giveaways at the moment. So if you see, for example, posts on LinkedIn, there's ways in which ChatGPT, other generative AI tools talk about things that can kind of be a bit of a giveaway. And I think that people will sometimes switch off once they see that and think that that's not somebody's genuine voice. So yeah, that's why we're looking to avoid those giveaways. And yeah, while I've been rambling away, then you can see that it's created now the full document in Word format, which is really nice for us because we can download this, could instantly share it with the team, can print it off if we wanted to, and it goes through those things I mentioned. So objective, primary audience, it's confirmed top three source markets. Again, all of these things we could push back on, we could refine, we could adapt, we could add to some audience insights. So here they already want to visit Scotland. Awareness and aspiration are not the problem. Key message, supporting points, really interesting supporting points that we can then point to. Call to action, so find your accredited Highland experience. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but we can again refine that, turn that to a tagline. A secondary call to action as well. Then there's the elevator pitch and tone of voice rules. And I'm really interested in tone of voice rules for the reasons that we spoke about. And also that when we're generating campaign materials, we do want it to feel consistent. So what I'm going to look to do is take the tone rules and then turn that into a Claude skill, which I'll talk about more in a second. But just finally, in terms of this document, then we've got risks to avoid. So things that we should look to be very aware of and which Claude can now be aware of as well. So what you'll see me do is now go to the top right. I'll click on the button here and I can immediately add this to the project, which is a nice feature that Claude has. So now this document, the foundational column structure, has been added to the folder quite a neat fashion. And that means that it'll be there for reference from now on. And then just going to directly type in here. Oh, well, actually, what I'll do, be quite interesting, is rather than just take the tone rules and apply them straight away, how about we take some real brands and then see which of those most closely reflect what we want to achieve today. So got a prompt here, I'm going to copy and paste. So yeah, based upon the tone rules, Claude is going to suggest five real companies whose brand voice matches what we're aiming for and make them recognizable names. So again, in the chat, if you want to vote one, two, three, four, or five for which tone rules we should opt for. Or yeah, I see ML's put Ravi's tour. So if you do want to put in something else as well, then please do vote. We'll give it 30 seconds. And yeah, while you're voting, a Claude skill is a set of custom instructions that Claude can apply automatically. Think of it as specialist expertise. You teach Claude once and it remembers forever. And Claude has pre-existing skills for things like creating presentations or spreadsheets. And in a very meta fashion, creating skills is in itself a Claude skill. Yeah, so with that in mind, we're going to create a tone of voice skill that we can apply for this project. Um, yeah, thanks everyone. So a lot of votes for one. I appreciate what Claire says about accessible and human is key, going for option five. So what I'm going to do is combine one and five. Turn this into a called skill. So what that will now do is take this and then add it to the folder again. And what I'll mean is that then once this is done, and you might move forward in the interest of time if it takes too long, but this will then be a skill that then can be used for anything that we generate from now on. So we're going to move on to step four. And what we're going to do now is produce a channel plan and also have a variety of content angles. So most teams jump straight into doing a LinkedIn post without asking why using that platform for this specific audience. And what we do here is going to force that thinking. So what I'll do while Claude is building the skill, and oh, there we go, actually, just as I was talking about that. So it's now created the skill. Uh, provide some notes for us on the choice that is made. Um, and again, it's really useful to read through this because we can then agree, disagree, and then refine that before then storing or updating what this is. So I'm going to go back to the folder here, and I'm going to copy and paste the prompt for creating channel plan and content angles. I'll talk about this just as I enter it. So what we're going to do here is using the foundational column structure document, which is now stored in the folder. We're going to recommend a channel mix, so primary and secondary channels. So why each channel for this audience, best content format, realistic cadence. And then we're also going to do 8 content angles and hooks. For each, we're going to have a hook line, why it works for this audience, best channel, how it connects to the key message. Making a slight assumption in terms of 3-month campaign timeline, and then just saying every angle should ladder back to the key message defined in the foundational column structure, which I think it would do anyway, but just being a bit more specific around that. So yeah, so Claude has already started producing this. So if we go down this, we can see that we're getting a lot of detail already at this stage, which is very helpful for us. Around primary channels, talking about using paid social. So in this case, Meta, which is, I think, automatically where I would go to for this. Content marketing, so that as an additional primary channel. Editorial long form. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but you can see some of the depth that it's going into and that we're helping to shape. So it's important to say that I find that Claude is really good in terms of this executional, producing things at volume. And then where we can come in is providing that strategic oversight, using our experience, shaping things and doing that kind of, I think of it as being, in a sense, like an editor at this sort of stage, really polishing things, pushing back, refining, and doing it in quite a collaborative fashion. And yeah, secondary channels are also in here. Um, Email included. And then I created 8 content angles. So just showing that we can do a variety of angles. Each of these has a hook line, why it works. Um, I'll quickly go through these. If there's any that take your fancy, do also again vote in the chat. So there's angles 1 to 8. So I'll talk through these forward and then I'll go backwards. So see what appeals to you. So angle 1 is, what does accreditation actually mean? So there's a hook line, anyone can call themselves eco-friendly. Here's what the Scottish Highlands had to prove. And then there's a bit about why it works. Angle 2, the operator story. Hook line, she runs a 12-person kayaking company in Torridon. Here's what she had to change to earn her accreditation. Angle 3, the skeptic's guide. You've been burned by greenwashing before. Here's why this is different. Angle 4, the right to roam. So in most of Europe, you walk where you're permitted. In the Scottish Highlands, the law gives you the land. Kind of neat turn of phrase there. Angle 5, the verification challenge. So don't take our word for it. Here's how to check. Angle 6, season not snapshot. The Highlands in October is not a compromise, it is a different journey. Angle 7, the supply chain story. So the whisk in your glass is from 40 miles away, so is wool in your blanket. Here's why that matters. So more of a sustainable message there. And angle 8, the final one that we have right now, but we could make this less, we could make it more, we could make it 15, 20. At 8, I think even for our purposes is a bit too many, but kind of useful just showing the variety. Angle 8 is planning or made credible. Hook line is 3 days to accredit operators, 1 route. So yeah, if anybody has any preferences for these, do let me know. We can incorporate this in the next step. But just to mention, because I have gone through these pretty quickly, that you do see why it works. There's a recommendation around best channel. And then there's also, for our purposes, the connection to the key message. And yeah, so going up against this, so angle 7, angle 6, uh, angle 5, angle 4. I might actually go for angle 4 myself. Mary's going for angle 5. I'll go where the audience takes us. But yeah, very happy to do that. And just in terms of the chat, then I see Jeremy says this seems generally better in Chat GPT 5.2, at least the £20 version. That is, in my mind, my perspective right now is I would agree with you on that. just to say that one thing that I do find a drawback with Claude is that the usage rates can be uh, less than ChatGPT and less than Gemini. So because I was testing this morning, then you may have seen that there's a note saying that I'm already at 90% of my usage limit. So I do use Claude quite a lot. So that is something that does happen is I can bump into that limit, which will then reset every few hours. Or if you use it a lot across the day, it will reset for a day. So that is a drawback that is worth mentioning, considering when choosing which tool to go for. But you can always then have a backup. So you can use Claude as your primary and then ChatGPT free version as a backup or Gemini or something else. Yeah, thank you everyone for voting on that. So thanks Mike Gregg for voting for option four. I also see other people going for four. So let's go for that. Um, yeah, just in response to, is there unlimited usage of Claude if it's the paid version? Uh, what I have is the Pro version. So that I think right now is in the UK £15 a month. So slightly less than I think ChatGPT is. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that provides more usage than the free version, but it's not unlimited. And when people are using some intensive tools that Claude has, such as Claude Code, they can often bump into the restricted if they've gone above this. There's then the max versions, which I think can be with Claude. There's one that's around £80 and it goes up to a couple £100, which is obviously you do want to be using that a lot and getting money, getting worth for spending that amount. It's not something that I do personally at the moment. Yeah, so thanks everyone for their votes. So yes, I'm gonna go for the step four now, or sorry, step five, which is drafting assets. So I'm gonna copy and paste this, talk you through it in a second. We'll go with angle four. So thanks everybody for the votes. And yeah, I'll just talk through what we're doing. So one of the benefits of AI is producing strong drafts at pace. A lot of people associate AI with slop, and you can see why, especially like we're saying, when it comes to some social media output. And that's often because inputs are poorly defined. And you can see even in the kind of short space of time that we've had, we've been defining things precisely. Claude has been doing so, and we could take more time to do this. So let's see what that gets us. So this is the difference between days of work and hours. That's not to say that this would match a professional copywriter's best work or other types of content producers. And I speak as somebody who started off in the media and writing and making videos. So I'm also very keen that what we can do is then create a high quality starting point that people can then edit and shape. But it can be really good when you're also limited in time when you need to do something quickly and just have that kind of collaborative assistant by your side. So yeah, just to answer a couple of questions in the chat first before we get to the content angle. Um, yeah, so Mari asks, how do you port your ChatGPT projects across? Yeah, that's a slight annoyance at the moment. And yeah, sometimes you do have to, in a sense, kind of start over. But I do find that it doesn't take too long if you're copying and pasting between different tools. Um, I quite like, and I think I talked about this a bit more in the presentation, that I do quite like to use different tools and then compare and contrast. So with this output, if we had more time, I'd take some of these assets and actually put those into ChatGPT and have that critique it from its perspective and vice versa. And then I can be then using that to then take the inputs from several different tools. And then Claire asks, I assume that the most common platform for many businesses would be Copilot, given its Microsoft version. Yes, I do believe that that's the case from what I've read. And I think that you see more companies in the moment starting to use ChatGPT Enterprise, which is enterprise kind of level software. There are alternatives to that, but as somebody who's worked a lot in the third sector, then I know a lot of charities have Microsoft licenses and Copilot's automatically part of that. So I think that sort of adoption that drives that. So yeah, I'm just going to go through the content here before get too much into the Q&A session. Yeah, content angle, so we've gone for a right to roam. And then what you'll see, touch wood, is that Claude has generated all the assets that we spoke about and done so in quite a good level of detail. So we specified the amount of words for each of these. You can see the channel rationale, so it's also telling us why it's done it in the way that it has. Looking at this in kind of first glance, it's quite an interesting approach for this. It does tell us we're claiming these evidence, um, things where you can put in detail. So I could ask it right now to make assumptions. I could just assume and put things in rather than these square brackets, but I find it quite useful if we're just seeing where you want to input into. We also linked in carousel, where it's proposed kind of slides and the headlines, supporting lines for these. Uh, Tone checks and making sure it matches our tone. My flags that we've also wanted to go through. There's email to prospects, so subject line, preview text, then the copy here. Tone check again, press release. So again, some rationale for this list of outlets. So it's even identified the types of outlets that we think we should be aiming for with this. And then final one that we suggested was an internal Slack post, so for an internal post itself. And then asset six, what I did within prompt was ask Claude just to ad lib something. So I was said do something a wee bit different. So it's gone for an annotated myth versus fact two-page PDF handout. So it's given us a rationale for doing this, something a little different. This audience puts up beautifully designed printed material travel trade shows. So that's why it's decided to do this. And you can see that it's kind of provided again content in terms of copy for this. We could get it to generate images through its linking in with tools such as Canva. But yeah, that's the asset suite complete. So yeah, that's the real benefit here is that you get early sight of a fully configured content suite that removes the inefficiency of working on something for a long time, only to discover that it's not appropriate. And you do know much sooner where to focus your time. And then what we're going to do is then move on to step six. Um, so yeah, thanks for the questions. We'll get to those in the Q&A section shortly. Yeah, the final section, what we're doing is the governance pass. So yeah, if anything that you saw when we're going through it jumps out as risky, bland, or off tone, that's exactly why we have a governance pass or a kind of quality gate. So AI has generated these assets at pace. So we're going to make it put on the editor's hat and critique its own work against the standards we set. So that's kind of split we spoke about earlier. So AI does the bulk of the execution work. You provide the bulk of strategic judgment, and then part of the AI's work be critiquing itself, which surfaces issues that you may have missed. And as mentioned, I often put drafts through a different tool for a second opinion. So you could run what's being produced here through ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok. Then you could bring that feedback back into Claude. Both tools can then critique each other's outputs if you want to do that. And then you'll always be the one who's judging and shaping that. Today, we're keeping it in Claude for speed. And I'm just going to copy and paste a prompt here, which I'll also then talk you through. So yeah, we're telling Claude that it's a risk and quality checker to review all the assets that we just drafted against the structure and tone rules. And then we've asked for it to identify some things here, given it some things that we want to see so that will be helpful for us when we're reviewing. And then we're then looking for it to do a rewrite and create a 10-point pre-publish checklist. And yeah, I'll just go through what's started generating already. So yeah, this is for us really useful. So the section one is claims needing evidence. So we have asked it to make assumptions. So in a sense, we have been giving it this problem and it's identifying these. So I'll go through issue 1.1 first, and then we can look more briefly through the others. So it's judged as a high severity, the fact that in the press release, and it's specified the paragraph, so it makes it easy for us to find a problem line. So this problem line is the Scottish Outdoor Access Code administered by square brackets. sets out the responsibilities that accompany those rights, a published framework governing responsible use of land that's both specific and enforceable. And then it says why it's an issue. So enforceable is doing significant legal work here and is currently unverified. I'll not go through all of this, but you can see that it's giving us some quite detailed rationale for this, and it's providing a revised version as well while talking about this. So you see this through the other issues that it's identified, so the severity level, what the asset is, why it's an issue, revised version, which is very useful for us to go through. We could ask it on its own to then implement these changes if we were going through this again in a bit more time. But you can see that we already have a bunch of revisions that we can make to this, so it will help strengthen what we're doing. Section 2 is tone mismatches. So the tone of voice that we spoke about earlier is looking at how some of the lines within this does not match the tone of voice. So it's talked about why it's an issue. In this case, with issue 2.1, the line introduces a slightly combative edge. It's producing suggesting a revised version. And you can see this for the other issues I identified. Then section 3, misleading or reputationally risky content. So again, just going a wee bit through the first 3.1. So severity is high, directs us to the asset, the problem line, which is Scotland's land reform gives Highland Walkers a statutory right to roam. The new accreditation scheme gives them somewhere credible to stay when they get there. So why it's an issue, two risks in one headline. Firstly, right to roam is a colloquialism. I've not said that word in a while. And then second, somewhere credible to stay implies a accreditation scheme. So again, walking us through this with detailed rationale, producing a revised version for us. And then we have lines that are too vague or generic. So things that we can then sharpen up. I'll not go through this. I think that kind of speaks to itself. But again, things that are useful for us. And then we asked it to do rewrites for the three riskiest lines. So that's what it's doing here. So that is very useful for us. And then the 10-point pre-published checklist. So I wanted to produce this specifically because it's something that I use across projects and work that I do with clients in my day job. I really like using AI tools to then run stuff that we've produced, and make sure that it's in line with the client expectations and anything that we might want to be considerate about. So here we have the different checkpoints. So first checkpoint is brackets cleared, so to ensure we clear those. Accreditation claims verified, legal framing checked, geographic claims proportionate, no unverified superlatives. So this is very specific to the campaign that we're doing. And again, we can amend, add, remove, change these. We can always update them as we go along. And then what we'd look to do is then add this to the project folder. So what I'll do in this instance, so that's what Claude has produced for the governance pass. So I'm going to take the checkpoint text here just to illustrate how this can work. So I'll copy that. I'll go back to the projects folder. I'll go to files. So you can see it's uploaded the foundational com structure when we added that to a project. What we can also do is by clicking on the cross here, we can add files. We can upload files from our own device. So if you downloaded anything, including previous materials, we can upload that. And then we can also add text content. So I'll paste in the checklist. I'll copy and paste that to make that the title. And then I'll add content. So now that will become part of the projects folder. So that becomes persistent, and now every future conversation in this project can reference it. And that becomes in itself a compounding effect in practice. So yeah, thank you very much for that. And then what I'm going to do actually, just before we get to the Q&A section, is to create a one-slide recap of what we just built in presentation format. This might take a wee bit longer than we have. If it does, we can talk through it anyway. But yeah, the things that we've done in terms of what we've built within the space of 30 minutes hereabouts. is creating a project workspace. We establish the foundational structures. There's the 5-step workflow that we spoke about and went through. We've created a custom skill, produced the key deliverables in a kind of first draft format for refinement or review. There's a pre-published checklist that we've saved. And then what we'll do within this recap as well is we'll have what this team can do tomorrow, keeping it visual and concise. So you see Claude working away here. But what we're doing here is a compounding effect in action in itself. So Claude knows everything we've done is all in this project. It can summarize, repackage, and extend the work without me having to explain everything over and over again. And if I open a new conversation in this project tomorrow, Claude already knows the brief and everything that we've built so far. It won't be starting from scratch. It'll have the tone rules, the quality standards, the foundational structure. Um, and yeah, just as a critical point, and I know I've said this before, but what this is about is AI being able to do a large amount of executional work and doing it quickly in conjunction with what we provided. And what we're providing is the strategic judgment, quality control, decisions about what's good enough and what needs refining. We can take a lot more time with any of the elements that we've done today, and that's something that you can do after this session. And then with more time, you shape these into the best possible versions using your own skills and experience. So yeah, thank you very much for sticking with this. And then Stephen, I'll keep the screen share for the moment, and then Claude should produce that slide at the end. But yeah, open to questions.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Michael. There's quite a lot in there. And so just to say to everybody that we have recorded the webinar today. So if there's anything that you would like to revisit or kind of watch a couple of times to kind of get your head around, the recording will be up and we'll send that round within the next couple of days. So you don't have to remember all of this. But we have had quite a lot of questions coming in, and one of them is round about kind of your process and the steps that you've taken to kind of come up with this. So Taimi and Polly have both asked kind of similar questions around how did you design this process in the first place? Like, is this based on your own expertise and your kind of background in marketing? And how closely does this resemble the sort of process that you would have gone through before AI was a thing, if you were building a campaign?
Yeah, well, very closely is the answer to that last part. And it's uh, it's a funny thing where I launched for my own consultancy a couple of years ago. So working in communications, more on the digital and social side of things, working with some great clients on that. And previous to that, through working at the likes of Red Bull and Brunswick, and currently also at Grayling, then that has involved a lot of building and producing campaigns. So this is the sort of typical workflow that I would go through. In Last summer, I launched Applied Comms AI, which I call like a learning lab, but it's where I'm much like Data Lab of experimentation. It's kind of trying out different tools, specifically AI for these sort of communications and experimenting and seeing what works and also what doesn't. And that's part of what I want to do because I think there's things and ways in which people use it that aren't great and sometimes can be quite self-defeating. But yeah, in slightly meta fashion, what I did, I think a couple of months back, was I was thinking about the Data Lab and events coming up, and so then created a campaign around how I could pitch to the Data Lab to do a speaking session. So here we are. So in a sense, I directly use this process not only across other clients and for my own purposes, but for this specific webinar that you're seeing today.
Right, thanks. That leads us on to a question from Phil, who's asked, have you used this workflow with any of your clients in real life, or is it still something that you're still at the exploratory stage with? Phil would be keen to hear that if you have used it with clients, how have they responded to this kind of process? And there was
Yeah.
another question that was kind of similar, which was asking from Ag, if you've ever involved your clients in this process, kind of with the AI kind of side of things.
Yeah, gonna stop sharing the screen share right now just so to see a bit more clearly. Yeah, it's a really interesting question in terms of working with clients, and I think that things are changing almost like week by week, but certainly month by month in terms of reception to that. I think if I was speaking a year or so ago, I think there'd be much more skepticism around the use of AI tools, the fact that the content generated. I think there's a lot of, and still is, and I think understandably a lot of, is this something that's taking away from both kind of human kind of sided like nature of things, of the quality of the work. Is the quality of the work not going to be as good? And is it also just a way, almost kind of a laziness of just putting this in ChatGPT and output stuff? You don't have to think about it too much. I think at this stage, speaking in February 2026, you're seeing, especially with marketing, communications, other agencies, that they're very quickly adopting and using these tools with, and clients are expecting that. So the type of work that traditionally would take a lot of time to produce, I think clients are now being more exacting around the use, well, basically how their money is spent and having to some extent much more expectation that agencies will be adopting and using these. Again, not to replace what people are doing, but basically like we're doing today to produce those kind of first drafts, that kind of suite of content, do things, and then kind of shape it from there.
Right, yeah, thank you. So we've got quite a few questions still here to kind of get through. So um, another one from Ag, who's asked, again, it's kind of similar to what you were talking about there. Have you found that you need less input from colleagues when you're building a campaign? They'd be curious to know how this has affected kind of the team structure within the teams that you're working in. I guess potentially there's less human resource needed to build a campaign than there might have been previously.
Yeah, I think it depends how it's used. So I do think that there's definitely the potential. And if you're speaking to anybody who, like myself, is kind of one person founder of an organization, you'll find yourself often working on things and then spending weeks on things and then not speaking to actual people. So I think that that's existed before. And I do find that what's been good and part of the reason for doing applied comms AI and thinking through these things is then how you can best take what's been done and then speak to people and get input into this. So part of what I really enjoy doing and stuff like this is then having conversations. Again, kind of think about how I currently work. Often what I'll then do is take a recording of the conversation I have with the client, if it's a consultation, for example. I'll then have a conversation with an AI tool. So it's kind of, much more of a collaborative process and then use that to kind of strengthen what we're doing. So it's helpful in the sense that with colleagues, you can see they're working a lot earlier. So whereas before, as somebody who, when I was working as a director for social media strategy, often if I went away for a period of time and came back with something, a kind of first draft, and it's in entirely in the wrong direction, and that's a lot of time that's been, I wouldn't want to say wasted, because there'll still be things from that that can be used, but
Mhm.
the fact you can do that much more quickly, show people a draft, get a response, is something I think that people do appreciate in terms of colleagues. Then it allows them to do what they do kind of quicker as well. So it can be a bit more integrated when you're thinking about kind of larger teams and organizations.
Right, yeah, thank you. And I guess Tammy's mentioned there that the skill is in knowing how to avoid the AI slop. So kind of like what you're saying, the role is potentially a lot more of a kind of editor role in terms of figuring out what direction you want to take it in.
Yeah. And then what feels like another lifetime, I was a sub-editor for the Herald and then worked as a producer for STV and BBC. And as somebody who, prided himself in being, I don't want to say a great writer, but decent. I was still in those positions and others, and I'd be time pressed, and then I would publish and do things that then afterwards I wasn't especially proud of. So I think that it's similar, but just a different kind of state of things where certainly you may feel yourself time pressed and you might dash something off that does feel a bit more generated by the AI rather than by yourself. And then afterwards you'll think, well, that didn't, I think you'll kind of get a sense of that as well. So when I was talking about LinkedIn posts, for example, I th I think that people may naturally then see that people didn't respond to that because it had a kind of typical starting structure that feels very much like what ChatGPT would say,
Hmm.
whereas it does feel much more in somebody's own voice, so people will respond to that. And it's part of the idea of with this sort of process that's walked us through today is that it provides things that are more in our tone of voice and closer to that. Again, not to say that that's something we'll just copy and paste and put straight in, but it does get us closer to something that feels more unique and more value as well to the audience that we want to speak to.
We ran a session last week with Katerina from Codebase in Edinburgh
Yes,
around
yes,
the AI
great.
market 101. I think you were in the audience for that one. And a question that came up there was around just because you mentioned that you used to do a lot of writing in your career in the past. One of the questions that came up there was around a slight fear from somebody who in the audience around potentially if they used AI too much, they would start to lose their own writing skills. So
Yeah.
do you take time sometimes to write stuff from scratch just to kind of make sure that those skills are still sharp?
Yeah, and it's funny, just before the webinar started, I was talking to yourself, Stephen, around producing this webinar. And what I did in this case, it was not so much write, but I was then talking as I was doing the kind of run throughs. I was recording myself and talking through it and using that to kind of give myself notes. And I think whether you're talking or writing or doing stuff, it's very good for being able to do drafts and I think a good thing, and again, speaking as a former sub-editor, if somebody handed you something and it looked really bad, sometimes you feel a bit judged by that. You know, you'd be slightly scared. Whereas, good thing about these tools is you can have some quick thoughts, you can note it down, and then you can send that, and then you can shape it from there. And then certainly just in terms of writing technique and style, then yeah, certainly I think that it's good to be able to keep up that practice and just find ways of expressing yourself and ensuring that the ways and means of you doing that kind of remains intact. So yeah, I know some people try to do daily writing and do a certain amount of words every day. I don't
Mhm.
know if I'm quite as good with that as I should be, but I do try to do that every so often.
There, yeah, yeah. No, I guess it's up to each person whether they feel like they need to practice more or less to kind of keep the skills sharp. So we've
Yeah.
got maybe a few minutes left for maybe another couple of questions. So there's quite a few that
Yeah.
we've not managed to get to. And just to say that for the questions that we haven't managed to answer on the session today, what I might do is I'll maybe pop them in the forum post that we had pre-event, and maybe you could go on afterwards and maybe write a written response to some of these questions for the
Yeah, I'd
ones
be
that we
glad.
don't get to.
Yeah.
But just for maybe the last couple, specifically around the Claude sort of interface, the platform that you were using, there's a question coming from Phil. Could you maybe just explain a little bit more about the skills and projects function that you used, and how that differs from other platforms?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The platforms themselves do have like the new version of Claude Sonnet 4.6 just launched, like I said, I think 12 hours ago. So that's what we're using today. So some of the features specific to Claude at the moment will then be available through ChatGPT and Gemini, if not already. So both ChatGPT and Claude, which I use most often, have the project's folder functions. And I've been using that a lot since last year. I think they were introduced maybe by ChatGPT around springtime or so. I might be wrong about that. Um, but I just found them incredibly useful for working with, particularly with client work and specific types of what we're doing. So ChatGPT does have that. Gemini can then tap into folders. So that's something that's kind of common. The Claude Skills is something that doesn't exist, to my knowledge, so much across ChatGPT or Gemini at the moment. Gems, custom GPTs on both those platforms do perform functions that are similar to that. So again, it's always worth. It's hard to keep up to date with these things because even somebody who does work in it every day is updating so quickly. But yeah, those are kind of slightly more specific to Claude, but you'll be able to find if you are using Copilot, for example, there'll be ways of working within folders and doing stuff. It is slightly different. And again, my personal preference leans towards Claude at the moment, but I think you can still achieve strong results, whatever tool you're using at this stage.
And am I right then that the skills feature is it allows you to have a kind of point of reference that your kind of prompts will then refer to, so that you're not constantly having to remind it of the same rules and kind of context that you're looking to work with.
Yes, exactly. And sorry, I'm just sharing the slide deck that I mentioned at the end, just to say that it did get generated around kind of what we built in 13 minutes. So you can see that here. And yeah, certainly with Claude skills and that side of things, it's just having I find the folders, the skills kind of marry together really well to have just a persistent kind of workspace to work within. And the folder can contain the instructions, documents that you want it to always refer to. The skills can have the ways of doing things that are kind of specific. So this is a tone of voice skill, but it could also be a visual branding skill. It could be a review skill. It can be really what you want to do. It's very flexible.
Mhm.
And then therefore these project folders can be then very tailored to, what you are, what you do, who you work with, and yeah, just be as tailored as possible.
Brilliant. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've unfortunately run out of time, and there still are quite a few questions in the Q&A and in the chat that we've not managed to get to.
Yeah.
So we will post them in the forum, and I'll send a link round afterwards. So if you've not got
Yeah.
a link to the forum or you're not joined the community yet, you can join in that conversation as well.
Yeah.
But just to say thanks again, Michael, for preparing this and speaking today. We've got another couple of sessions coming up this month, still on the theme of marketing. Next Tuesday, we just announced this afternoon, we've got a session specifically around kind of using AI for marketing within kind of regulated industries. And we've also got a session next week focused on kind of the public sector and how paid media advertisement is helping the public sector recruit foster carers. So there's still a couple of things coming up. If you're interested, those are all on the events board, and you can sign up for those um, for free. But otherwise, thanks again for everybody for joining and for getting involved in the chat and helping us shape the direction of the session. And thanks again, Michael.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. That was really enjoyable.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Cheers.